Coming up on Arirang News, South Korean stocks finished the last trading day of 2019. A mixed result on the last day, but the country's main index, the Kospi, is up a little under 8% for the year. Korea's three main leading indicators, production, consumption, and investment, were all up in November, with analysts calling for more gains in the new year. And President Moon, in his last cabinet meeting of the year, urges lawmakers in parliament to overcome their differences and pass several key bills today related to the economy and people's livelihoods. It's 4:00 p.m. here in Seoul. Thanks for tuning in to Arirang News. I'm Devin Whiting. President Jaein, in his last cabinet meeting of the year today, called on Parliament to swiftly pass bills that are directly affecting people's livelihoods. Several bills are due for a vote today, including some economy-related ones, but lawmakers are deadlocked politically on those that would reform the country's elections. Here's the president.
아무리 정치적으로 대립하더라도 국회가 해야 할 최소한의 일마저 방기하며 민생을 희생시키는 일은 없어야 합니다. 진정으로 민생과 경제를 걱정한다면 민생 경제 법안만큼은 별도로 다뤄주기 바랍니다.
Then, discussing planned reforms to the prosecution, President Moon added that the nation has reached the point at which it can take another look at solving injustices. He also praised the Korean people for their hard work, saying that through their efforts and sacrifices, next year will be better. The Central Committee of North Korea's ruling party is holding a plenary session this week. For the first time since Kim Jong-un rose to power in 2012, the session is lasting for multiple days, showing that the regime has lots to discuss amid the stalemate in nuclear talks with the U.S. Oh Jung-hee has this report.
North Korea's ruling party gathering is into its third day under Kim Jong-un's lead, while its self-imposed year-end deadline on nuclear talks is nearing fast. On Monday, Pyongyang's state-run Korean Central News Agency reported that the plenary session of the ruling Workers' Party Central Committee was held for a second day on Sunday and will continue. While the North says the meeting is to find ways to raise the regime's strategic status, Sunday's session seems to have dealt mostly with economic development. The report first mentioned that Kim Jong-un spoke on how to develop the economy and raise people's living standards. But Kim also highlighted the need to ensure the regime's security and called for roles to be played by foreign affairs and military officials, as well as the arms industry. Plenary sessions of the North's ruling party Central Committee are deemed important because they decide the regime's future policy directions. This is where Kim Jong-un in April 2018 proclaimed a policy shift from developing nuclear weapons to developing the economy. And in April this year, Kim Jong-un announced that the North will walk a new path if the U.S. fails to come up with a more flexible approach to denuclearization by the year's end. But the meeting currently underway is drawing even more attention because it's the first time under Kim Jong-un that it's continued over multiple days. The results of this plenary session are expected to be unveiled on Tuesday, and further specifics will be delivered directly by Kim Jong-un through his New Year's address on January 1st. Oh Jung-hee, Arirang News.
Meanwhile, President Trump's national security advisor has warned North Korea that the U.S. has many tools in its toolkit and will use them to demonstrate its disappointment should the regime press ahead with the provocation it's been hinting at for weeks. Lee Seung-jae reports.
In an interview with ABC News on Sunday, U.S. National Security Advisor Robert O'Brien said Washington will respond accordingly to any provocation from the North. His comment comes amid concerns the regime could be preparing to launch an intercontinental ballistic missile to express its frustration over stalled denuclearization talks with the U.S. According to O'Brien, the U.S. would be extraordinarily disappointed if North Korean leader Kim Jong-un decides to take such a provocative approach, but will demonstrate that disappointment to the North. Asked about the possible consequences of an ICBM or nuclear test, O'Brien declined to speculate, but said the U.S. has a lot of tools in its toolkit, and additional pressure can be brought to bear on the North Koreans. Despite the threat from Pyongyang, Christmas passed with the regime's so-called gift going undelivered. However, South Korea and the U.S. are still on high alert amid assessments that the window for a provocation remains open. O'Brien suggests Kim Jong-un may have changed his mind on the basis of his good personal relationship with President Trump. Meanwhile, the U.S. Air Force released a video showing how it would deal with a possible ICBM launch by the North. The video shows a simulation of an ICBM missile being launched from a region just north of Pyongyang. The video shows a Aegis destroyer spotting the missile and the MQ-1 Predator drone flying shortly after. The U.S. then responds with ground interceptor missiles, but the video does not show the warheads being destroyed. Watchers say the video shows how seriously the U.S. is taking North Korea's threats while also proving its defense readiness. 이승재, Arirang News.
President Moon Jae-in is granting pardons for the new year to 5,174 people, including some 1,800 conscientious objectors, plus ordinary criminals and those convicted of election offenses. The list also includes the former head of the Korean Confederation of Trade Unions, who was jailed after clashes during protests over working hours, as well as the former Seoul Education Superintendent. The presidential office explained that the pardons this time are aimed at enhancing unity among the Korean people. The Justice Ministry says they'll take effect on New Year's Eve. This is the third time the president's used his power to issue pardons since taking office 2 years ago. South Korea's stock market ended the year's final day of trading on Monday. The main index, the Kospi, was down 0.3% to close at just under 2198. Year to date, the Kospi gained 7.8%, quite a bit less than many other major markets. It was a strong close for the tech-heavy Kosdaq, which added 1.3% on the last day to end at just under 670. On New Year's Eve tomorrow, the Kospi, the Kosdaq, and the derivative and foreign exchange markets will all be closed. They'll reopen at 10 a.m. on January 2nd, 1 hour later than usual, but trading will close at the regular time at 3:30 p.m. South Korea's industrial output rebounded in November. Government data released on Monday show production in all industries rose last month by 0.4% on an increase in the service sector. Statistics Korea attributed the rise to various retail events, such as the Korea Sale Festa. Retail sales, led by clothing and cosmetics, jumped 3% on month, and facility investment also rose by around 1% during the same period. This is the first time in 3 months that all three of those indicators have risen together. However, the manufacturing, mining, gas, and electricity industries fell by 0.5% from a month earlier. Korea's biggest companies are doing some major reshuffles at the top levels as they end the year. As our Hong Yu reports, some of their boards of directors will look quite different in 2020 in terms of age and gender. Boards are also getting smaller.
There is a clear change of generation in this year's board member reshuffles at major conglomerates. The Korea CXO Institute, a business data analysis firm, defines this new trend with the acronym WINDY, standing for Women, Intercross, Narrow, Decrease, and Young. Companies such as LG and POSCO have appointed young women to their boards, most of them born in the 1980s. The average age of board members at CJ dropped to 45.3 this year from last year's 47. And it is the first time ever that 21% of its new board members are women. These changes are being called revolutionary because until now overall, only 0.4% of Korea's board members of any gender were in their 30s. The new ideal for a board member in the fourth industrial revolution is a leader with the ability to work in a diverse range of fields. Emart, for example, one of Korea's biggest retailers, has appointed as its CEO a young man who used to be a business consultant. The Korea CXO Institute says conglomerates expect such leaders to create new synergy by combining different industries. However, it has apparently become harder in general for executives to get promoted. For example, this year, SK promoted 10 fewer executives than the year before. POSCO promoted 18 fewer, and Lotte cut promotions by 114. Companies have also reduced the size of their boards. The institute says in these reshuffles, the owners of conglomerates are seeking the greatest results with the smallest number of people. 홍유, Arirang News.
Time now for an in-depth look at the market news on this Monday, and for that I'm joined on the line by Dr. Yang Jun-seok, Professor of Economics at the Catholic University of Korea. Professor Yang, thank you for making time today.
Happy to be here.
So after the U.S. and China announced their Phase 1 trade deal that led to a record year in the U.S. financial markets, the stock markets, a different situation here in Korea, you might say, but it's the last day of trading. What's the story in Korea and globally?
Okay, well, in Korea, the stock markets, as you pointed out in the last story, has been mixed. If you look at the last 2 weeks or so, KOSPI has been on a roughly downward trend, while KOSDAQ has been on a roughly upward trend, but it's very slight. It's more or less flat. It's been a very uneventful week, both in Korea and globally. There has been no major or surprising news, so I think that explains why the Korean markets are so calm. The big news is the U.S. market. The U.S. market last week has hit record highs. Some of the indices fell a little bit on the end of the week, but still, they're very close to record highs. They attribute that to the so-called Santa rally. Whenever the end of the year comes around, the stock market tends to go up. But the problem is are these highs justified? It may be that the very low interest rates, the 0.75% cut that they had throughout this year may be driving the market, because if you have a low interest rate, you really can't go anyplace else than the stock market to get high returns. So there's slight worries about whether this is a bubble or not. U.S. does have a fairly strong economy. It does have a very tight labor market, but still, it's not clear whether the current economic situation completely justifies all these highs. The European and Chinese markets, they also seem to be rallying, though not as high as the U.S. markets, and that's probably because it's following the trend of the U.S. market.
Yeah, well, speaking of economic indicators, according to Statistics Korea, we have three key ones: consumption, investment, production, all improving in November, and possibly signs of improvement in the 6 months to come. What's your outlook for the new year?
Okay, well, it was a fairly good report. The production rose by 0.4%, led by the services. Services rose by 1.4%. Manufacturing didn't do as well. Consumption rose by 3.0%. So just with these numbers, it's very good. And then the business investment rose by 1.1%. So that is also good as well. Slight bad news may be that construction fell by 1.8%. But the current economic activities index rose by 0.1%. And advanced economic activities index, which signal possible future activities, rose by 0.4 points. So that seems to be a good signal for going onwards. But if you look at the report in more detail, there's some worrying trends here. First of all, the production was led by services, mostly in wholesale and retail sales, and consumption was led by semi-durables such as clothing, game gear, and durables such as automobiles, electronics, and furniture. And the Statistics Korea attributes much of this to Korea Sales Festival, the so-called Korea Sale Festa that they had last month. Now, when we had more than 3.0% increase in consumption in the last year, in March and August, the following month we had a large fall in consumption. So whatever temporary sales that they had probably cannibalized future sales. We'll have to see whether that is true this time as well. And then the business investment, even though it rose by 1.1%, most of it seems to be driven by investment in airliners and airplanes. So Asiana and Korean Air probably received pre-scheduled airplanes that they had contracted for. So we'll have to see whether consumption and business investment continues. Construction. The reason that the Advanced Economic Activities Index rose so much was because they got a lot of orders, which is probably for civil engineering SOC projects that the government has promised in the new budget. So we'll have to see whether this is a spark, just 1 month spark, or whether the government will actually succeed in lighting the fire and leading the recovery. But right now, the factors which made this November's report so good seems to be a 1 month event.
Got it. Well, you mentioned consumption there. Looking ahead this week, we'll have consumer inflation numbers coming out. Of course, inflation's been extremely weak this year. Also, we'll have the release of the minutes of the latest Fed meeting. That and what else should we watch this week?
Okay, well, on the Korean side, we have the Business Sentiment Index. The index was 74 in November. It rose by 2 points. So there seems to be a slight increase in optimism. We'll have to see whether that continues. And then the Bank of Korea reveals the report on market-weighted interest rates. So that's the actual market rates. We'll have to see how much difference there is between the policy rates, which is 1.25%, the lowest in Korean history, and the actual rates. So that should be a signal on how well the monetary policy is working. And then more than statistics, the more interesting things will be the year-end speeches. We have one by Bank of Korea Governor Lee Ju-yeol on Tuesday and one by the Vice Prime Minister Hong Nam-gi on Friday. That should give a clearer indication on how the government and the Bank of Korea wants to proceed with policy next year. And then on the foreign side, this week we have figures on U.S. current account coming in and U.S. ISM Purchasing Managers Index, which should show how the state of the trade in the United States and the how well the U.S. economy is doing. U.S. economy seems to be moving away from possibility of recession, but we'll have to see the Purchasing Managers Index to see whether the numbers back that up. And the current account, if it gets worse, then President Trump will probably step up on his protectionist policy next year. So we'll have to keep an eye out for those numbers.
All right, Professor Young, we'll have to leave it there for today. Thanks so much for coming on, and Happy New Year to you.
Thank you, and Happy New Year.
Now, the South Korean government will remove web browser plugins using the outdated ActiveX framework from all public organization websites by 2020 to make those sites accessible through a greater variety of browsers. The Ministry of the Interior and Safety announced last week that ActiveX will be removed from over 2,700 such sites. It has already since August been removed from the sites of some 20 public organizations, including Government 24, a site for public services used by more than 3 million people a year. ActiveX was originally adopted in South Korea as a tool for web security, but it's proved vulnerable to cyber attacks, and it's barely compatible with anything other than Internet Explorer. Lots of other changes coming to our daily lives in South Korea next year. For example, there'll be almost no need to carry coins around anymore. And couples with children will be able to take their maternity and paternity leave at the same time so they can spend time taking care of their children. Our Kim Da-mi tells us more.
In 2020, the cashless society will come closer to reality. Starting next year, convenience stores and supermarkets will be able to deposit cash change directly into the customer's bank account. This is part of the Bank of Korea's efforts to build a cashless society, eliminate the inconvenience of carrying and using coins, and to reduce the expenses of making coins. In fact, fewer and fewer people are keeping cash in their wallets. Last year, the average amount they carried dropped from $100 to less than $70. Sweden, the Netherlands, and Denmark are already enjoying the perks of the cashless society, including transparency in financial transactions and thinner wallets. Another change in the coming year, South Koreans will pay around $3 more a month for their national health insurance. The base rate will be about $100 a month. But there's some good news too. If you buy a new car in the first half of the year to replace one that's at least 10 years old, the individual consumption tax will be reduced from the current 5% to just 1.5%. Also, starting next February, parents can take paternity leave at the same time for the same child. South Korea's labor ministry says couples both on paternity leave can take up to 80% of their salary for the first 3 months. In addition, leave will be available to parents who live apart from their children, which is expected to encourage people, especially fathers, to spend time taking care of their kids. 김다미, Arirang News.
The past decade has seen a steady rise in the influence of pop culture from Northeast Asia, led of course by K-pop. That's how CNN explained the shift in the global entertainment industry over the course of the 2010s, adding that K-pop's popularity is projected to continue into the 2020s. Kim Hyo-sun reports.
In 2019, the music videos of South Korean pop groups BTS and Blackpink smashed YouTube records, while Parasite became the first ever Korean movie to win the Palme d'Or at the Cannes Film Festival, and then the film's director Bong Joon-ho appeared on The Tonight Show starring Jimmy Fallon, speaking mainly in Korean. This is how CNN describes the notable shift in the entertainment industry over the past decade, a steady rise in the influence of pop culture exports from Northeast Asia, mainly led by South Korea. In an article titled Why the Past Decade Saw the Rise of East Asian Pop Culture, CNN explains that the center of the global entertainment industry, which was dominated by Lady Gaga and the movie Avatar in 2009, has now shifted to Asia, represented by South Korea and Japan. It also pointed to the global influence of Psy's Gangnam Style, as well as the fact that top English-language fashion magazines like Vogue regularly feature K-beauty products. Experts say social media and the internet have transformed the transnational flows of pop culture. Citing a report published by Korean think tank, the Hyundai Research Institute, CNN also explained that K-pop group BTS inspired many tourists to visit the country. The report also added that if the group maintains their popularity, BTS will contribute an estimated $48 billion to the South Korean economy by 2023. Quoting experts, CNN projected Tokyo and Seoul's cultural exports will continue to have an impact in the coming decade as well. Kim Hyo-sun, Arirang News.
A record-breaking 220 million cinema tickets have been sold in South Korea so far this year. The Korean Film Council released the figure on Sunday, which was calculated between January 1st and December 28th. It's up by roughly 10 million from last year. It'll be even higher by year's end tomorrow. The increase is largely attributed to 5 movies that sold more than 10 million tickets each. They are 2 Korean films, Extreme Job and Parasite, as well as the Hollywood offerings Avengers Endgame, Frozen 2, and Aladdin. The annual number of moviegoers in South Korea has remained above the 200 million mark since 2013, with 2017 marking the previous record prior to this year. One of South Korea's biggest winter events, the Pyeongchang Trout Festival, kicked off in northeastern Gangwon-do province over the weekend. You could try ice fishing there, plus lots of other fun activities like sledding and skating. Our Kim Jae-hee was there.
Pyeongchang is one of the coldest and snowiest regions in South Korea. Every year, various winter events are held across the entire province, but due to exceptionally warm temperatures this season, the annual Pyeongchang Trout Festival kicked off a week later than originally scheduled this year. Nevertheless, the frozen part of the Odechon stream was packed with visitors on the festival's opening day on Saturday.
The Pyeongchang Trout Festival provides various programs using snow and ice. There are many hands-on activities such as snow sledding, snow rafting and ice skating. Some 700,000 people participated in the event last winter.
The main attraction of the festival is ice fishing. Anglers carefully unhook the trout after successfully pulling it out of the water. Families, including children of all ages, can enjoy ice fishing and make happy memories together.
I came to catch trout with my family because it is the weekend. We caught the trout in just over 3 hours. I hope we can eat delicious food with this huge trout.
Those too eager to wait for the trout to take the bait prefer a faster method. They are brave enough to go into the freezing water in just t-shirts and shorts.
The noodling event offers visitors the chance to catch trout with their bare hands. Despite the freezing temperatures, visitors are jumping in the icy water to catch the trout barehanded.
The trick is to corner the trout and quickly grab it when it's trapped in a dead end. The person who catches the special trout, marked with a golden circle on its tail, is awarded with a prize made of pure gold.
Despite the chilly weather, it was very exciting. I had a great time with many people coming to the festival. There's still lots of time left, so I hope more people come to play.
But the real highlight of the festival is eating the freshly caught trout on site. After hours of fishing, participants can have their fresh trout served up, either raw or grilled, in one of the festival's kitchens. Kim Jae-hee, Arirang News, Pyeongchang.
And that does it for this hour. Thank you for watching.
Wherever you are in the world, Lotte is always close to you. Lotte will be with you throughout the world until the name Lotte is synonymous with friendship. Your lifetime friend, Lotte.